All right, I'm going to go over that scale sheet after demonstrating the two new things. Just some things to help you see how they're connected. And yeah, let's get into it here. So 60 beats per minute for your chords. And yes, practicing with distortion makes the mistakes of poor muting more obvious. So it's good to practice with distortion if you want to play with distortion. And one thing, just to think about here, in terms of like, difficulty of what we're going to have to get into in order to play whatever you want to play. I'm not sure if you were just joking around that you have no interest in doing 16th notes, because when you mentioned you wanted to learn Hendrix type stuff, I mean, that's definitely not beginner type things. That's going to be a big challenge. And he definitely uses 16th notes. So just something to keep in mind there. Something to keep in mind. All right, 60 for the chords. Wait, I'm on the wrong channel. 1, 2, 3, 4. 20, 1, 2, 3, 4. 180, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 240, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 300. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So same deal. You get this up to at least 240. Go ahead, send the video. Let's just double check, make sure everything sounds good. Same thing with this. You get up to 240, send the video. Alright, so this is to help you focus on synchronizing the fretting hand and the picking. So when you need to fret something, you need to make sure that your fretting finger goes down the exact same time the pick hits the string. And when you are to release that finger on the fretting hand to go back to the open string, you need to release your finger and hit the pick, or have the pick hit the string at the exact same time as well. Anytime that you go to fret something and you hear your finger go down before the pick hits, that's incorrect. Try it again. So make sure that you don't just continue on with this thing until hoping that it'll be correct. So let's say that note right there. You keep coming to this note, but you keep hearing yourself put the finger down early. Do not just continue on. Because if you do that, you're not addressing the mistake, and you just practiced a mistake. Practice makes permanent. Only perfect practice makes perfect. When you go to release the note, again, if you notice that you keep letting go of the note early, producing an extra sound, or basically hearing the open string ring a little bit, you let go too soon then. We can't have that either. Try it again. Try where the mistake happened. Try polishing that up, and then go back to the start. So one of the biggest mistakes people will make is they will continue to play something. They'll try and loop it over and over again, hoping that they'll finally get it right, or they'll continue to do that until it's correct. But you don't want to spend a bunch of time in the mistake area. Pretend like you're recording. We're not just going to, and the old days of analog recording too, not like we can do today. Like, it's it. You gotta get that take. If it's goofed, start it over again. Get a better take. Get the take correct. We're not gonna edit out the mistakes right now, even though you can nowadays. But anyway, all right. So I got the fingers I want you to use for each fret. This way you get equal use for all of them. And here we go. 60. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, done. 120. A 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 181. 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. I screwed that up. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. And good old 240. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright. So, as far as the scale stuff goes. So, whoops, that's not what we want. This is what we want. Okay. Alright, so yeah, this is the stuff to learn because it's teaching you where all the natural notes are on the fretboard. So key of C, basically all the white keys on the piano. That's what you're learning here. Now, something to keep in mind, after a week or two, at least a week or two of trying these shapes, if you feel like the stretches are just still too much for you, if it causes any kind of finger, wrist, any kind of joint strain and pain, we can do what I like to call condensed shapes. Other people, it's more commonly referred to as like caged shapes, but I think that might be confusing for a lot of people to hear caged, like, well, what the heck is that? Condensed, like, well, it's no stretching. Basically, the condensed shapes will have like this kind of 4 fret span right here instead of the 5 fret span. So there's no big stretches. So it's easier to, I guess, fret in terms of the lack of stretch. But it is a little bit more difficult to see the patterns because you got to remember what shapes will have only 2 frets used each string versus 3 frets per string. So even though the 3 notes per string shapes have a bigger stretch, they are easier patterns to remember. But we can do the condensed shapes if need be. But let's give it a couple weeks here, see if you can get a little more used to this, a little more accustomed to it. Because it does make it easier to visualize the fretboard, I feel, when you can learn these things. So, yeah. Looks like you had this shape starting on the 5th fret, so you had the A major scale. That was good. But now let's move it up so you're starting on the 8th fret instead, because you want to learn each one of these shapes. You're going to get each one memorized. So you get the C scale or the Ionian mode memorized, and then you start to learn the D Dorian shape here. Get that up and down memorized. So you're going to play both the Ionian and then the D Dorian back to back from memory before you move on to the E Phrygian. And you'll start up here on the 12th fret. Once you have those 3 shapes memorized, then you go down to the open position for the E Phrygian. So just add one at a time. There is no rush on this. Just memorize one at a time. And these are things you can use for improvisation, absolutely. And we will get into that. If you already know how to practice improv, it sounds like you might, because you talked about doing jam stuff before, just put on an A minor backing track, use these shapes. They all work, every single one. You just start smacking the notes around over an A minor backing track, and you're good. Just make sure you're in tune. So, looking at this, you're just going through, again, all your natural notes. So you see Ionian starting on C, then it goes to D, E, F, G, A, B, and so on. So I believe you watched that video where it explained the whole color-coded system. So I'm just going to skip ahead to the next thing here. If you have any questions about the color-coded thing, please let me know so we can clear that up. So one of the cool things that happens here with these kinds of shapes that makes this easier to see. If we take the first dot or the first note of each string and delete it. First note of each string here for this first shape. And then we go down here and delete the last note of each string. See, we're left with the exact same pattern. Every time you're playing one of these scale shapes, you are playing like 2/3 of the next, or even the previous one. Where one shape ends, the other begins. So this is going to happen every single time. So put these back. So if we remove the first note of each string here, the last note of each string here, once again, we are left with the same shape. So realizing that can definitely help memorize all the shapes a little bit more easily, because you can see like this pattern shares these notes and then this pattern shares these notes, so they're always sharing stuff, always. Now, another cool thing about these 3-note per string scale shapes, let's see, I want to change this to, let's use this color because nothing else is using it. Just good old black here. So, the way these, because of the 6-string guitar and the way it's tuned, using these 3 notes per string shapes, this is just a thing that happens that we can take advantage of. So, on the high E string for this top, for the C Ionian shape here, see the frets that it ends with is 10, 12, 13, or the notes D, E, F. We'll go down to the D Dorian shape on the low E string, and look what we start with. D, E, F, 10, 12, 13. So this shape ends 10, 12, 13. So the next shape that goes, the next one up in pitch, that's going to begin 10, 12, 13, just on the low E string. And that happens every single time. The D Dorian shape here ends 12, 13, 15. The E Phrygian begins 12, 13, 15. Now, if we were to play this F Lydian an octave higher, it would start off 13, 15, 17 down here. But we can see over here on the low open E Phrygian, it ends 1, 3, 5. F Lydian begins 1, 3, 5. So just recognizing things like that, again, can just make memorizing these things much easier. Makes it a lot easier. One last thing to show. So we come down here. This is a reference for all the shapes to get together. And like looking at this could look like a big old mess, and that's why we learn one shape at a time. But all the shapes are in there. So right here, there's your C Ionian mode, or your C major scale. Here is the D Dorian shape. And with these two being right here on the screen, here is the A Aeolian shape, or your A natural minor scale. So there it is, same shape. And here is that B Locrian shape. So, once you get all the shapes memorized, you can use something like this as a reference just to make it easier to just practice your soloing with. So, hopefully all that makes sense. Again, if you got any questions with this stuff, let me know. And I'll see you again next week.